It's March 17, 2010, and this is The Bad Catholic. In my previous rant on the women's only night on my university campus to celebrate the International Week of Women, I seriously asked, what are they doing in there that we can't participate in it? Well, it seems that we have good supplementary evidence as to why feminists prefer captive audiences. The article in question here dates from March 11, 2010, link in the sidebar. Girl Scouts distribute Planned Parenthood sex guide at UN meeting. This piece has telling insight into the tactics we were talking about. Now, for any of you that have been living under a rock, Planned Parenthood is a media monger, otherwise known as an abortion provider, in the United States with subsidiaries around the world. Now, I know it's a stretch, but for some, it may be a surprise that Planned Parenthood and abortion are a mainstay of feminist dogma and activism. To try and separate the two is like trying to claim that the Catholic Church and Carmelite nuns have nothing to do with each other. But let me read this for you. Quote, the World Association of Girl Scouts and Girl Guides hosted a No Adults Welcome panel at the United Nations this week where Planned Parenthood was allowed to distribute a brochure entitled Healthy, Happy, and Hot. The event was part of the annual United Nations Commission on the Status of Women, which concludes this week. A No Adults Allowed panel. Well, doesn't that just sound familiar? And furthermore, are we still talking about the girls that sell frickin' cookies down at the mall here? What pressing issues do 10 to 16-year-old girl guides know enough about that it necessitates a closed panel discussion on the international stage? Well, nothing really, and that's probably because this has nothing to do with a panel. The first priority of feminists, like all sexual predators, is the need to get the children away from the safety and security of their parents and out of the public view. And exploiting institutions of social trust are just the safest way to do that. Now, I realize that this clearly is a feminist front job, but I'm wondering about the dude at the UN that actually approved this, because when my daughter comes to me and says, hey, Daddy, I want to go to a No Adults Allowed function, I'm pretty sure something stinks. And if it has to do with an organization, I can be pretty sure that that's a group that's recruiting my child because it's morally degenerate, unscrupulous, unprincipled, sexually exploitative. Well, I think you're getting the picture. Now, when a parent sends their 10-year-old daughter to Girl Guides, I imagine good, healthy values encouraging civic pride and good, clean fun are the expectations of the day. You know, positive activities that keep one's kids out of trouble and away from sexually manipulative situations that they're not emotionally equipped to handle yet. Well, guess what? That's not good enough for baby-killing femifascists because clearly parents are too trapped in their paradigms of patriarchal oppression to be trusted to know what's in the best interest of their children. And yes, I use their children in a possessional sense because if children don't belong to their parents, they belong to the community. And in case you haven't figured this out yet, community is another word for government. And the government doesn't know or care about you, your children, or anyone else for that matter except themselves. Which kind of sounds a lot like feminists, which makes a lot of sense as to why these feminist hacks are always hanging out there. But catch what pearls of wisdom little Sally picked up on her big trip to the UN. Quote, the brochure aimed at young people living with HIV contains explicit and graphic details on sex as well as the promotion of casual sex in many forms. The brochure claims many people think sex is just about vaginal or anal intercourse, but there's a lot of different ways to have sex and lots of different types of sex. There's no right or wrong way to have sex. Just have fun, explore, and be yourself. Ignoring the fact that this is endorsing mortal sin and more than likely even statutory rape, am I the only one that caught that this brochure is intended for HIV-positive people and it's endorsing casual sex anyway? I mean, isn't that just a little irresponsible on the face of things? I mean, especially for the opposition here. Something tells me I don't think little 10-year-old Sally should be exploring her sexuality with other kids anyway, but especially if she's HIV positive. Call me a bigot, but I didn't get 2 kids before the age of 21 by exercising self-restraint in my youthful passion of just having fun, exploring, and being myself. But hell, what does adjusting one's advice and practices based on experience have to do with child rearing, right? You know, why expect feminists to respond to evidence like the rest of us? But you know what? I'm digressing. The article goes on. Quote, the brochure encourages young people to improve your sex life by getting to know your own body, play with yourself. Masturbation's a great way to find out more about your body and what you find sexually stimulating. Mix things up by using different types of touch, from very soft to hard. Talk about and act out your fantasies. Talk dirty to them. Well, gosh, isn't that charming? Well, this gives a new spin to have a Girl Guide cookie, doesn't it? Something tells me this is not the wholesome activity these kids' parents signed the consent form for. But regardless, here we have another example of feminists orchestrating and exploiting an environment where open scrutiny, intellectual opposition, and genuine criticism are absent from the people involved at the time. I mean, just look at their targets here. Intellectually vulnerable children. I can only imagine the spirited debate that took place on this issue of contraception and abortion from these kids who clearly received so much data on the scientific and ethical complexities of these issues from a Planned Parenthood pamphlet. You have to critically analyze this concept, though. A no adults allowed event, and Planned Parenthood was allowed to distribute information. Are these employees on site? Well, the article doesn't say. Honestly, this is probably a pamphlet in a loot bag, but we're dealing with children here, remember. Now, we get to the crux of the issue. As the old patriarchs of the ancient Rome would ask, cui bono? This is a feminist organization that profits from committing abortions on women and children, being allowed to drop pamphlets promoting sexual activities to kids that are bound to end in pregnancy. A pregnancy that no doubt they will oh so reluctantly have to exterminate for the child's sake and a small fee. And is there an adult about to address this to or maybe turn to for guidance? Of course not. Because as Girl Scout CEO Kathy Klinger in a 2004 interview on the Today Show said, quote, we partner with many organizations. We have relationships with our church communities, with YWCAs, and with Planned Parenthood organizations across the country to bring information-based sex education programs to girls, end quote. Well, isn't that a cushy setup if your income is derived from murdering the babies of careless children? Because as a reference point to this discussion, we need to recall that these totalitarian feminists hit the fan when a smoking camel is put on a billboard near an elementary school. But if feminists hijack children's groups and drop sex-promoting pamphlets by an abortion provider and to unattended children, well, that's not exploiting children who are innocent. That's liberation. And a brief caveat to this thought, I hear these feminists and atheists talking about how religion manipulates children with fear and brainwashing. They claim it's child abuse, actually. Well, we need to ask, where are these champions of the young when it's feminism brainwashing and manipulating children for profit? Where's Dawkins' impassioned indignation or Sam Harris's cold condemnation when the UN and femifascists are actively promoting the pressuring of children into early sex and capitalizing on their inevitable abortions? Well, with that, we conclude another socially unacceptable episode of The Bad Catholic, because hell, somebody's got to say it. Ave Maria.